Everybody, good evening. Let's get going tonight, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the board went into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. We are, as you can see, we're back out. Can I have a motion to adopt an agenda? Petra is first, Andrea is second, all in favor? Yep.
Can we amend it? We officially amend it?
Oh, you want to,
Yes, sorry.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
sorry, thanks, Naomi. You had to tell us in there, and now we're gonna do it out here.
Yes.
So we amended the claims audit, thank you for that, to,
It's now an action item.
it's now an action item as well as it is up front, correct, as
Yes.
information?
Yep, that's it.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, cool beans, thank you. Can I get a motion to, or whoever,
Amended?
right?
Okay.
Amended, Naomi, Carla second, all in favor, thank you. So amending that, Vanessa first, and then adopt an agenda. Can I get a motion? Well, I went, so I started that, now I'll just do it, it's fine.
Oh, do you want to use
Andrew's
first?
Yeah, Andrea's first, Mary Colleen is second, or were you second?
No, I think it was.
Okay, Mary Colleen second, all in favor. Okay, let's roll. We're in, we're moving. Okay. Board of Education comments. We'll start out, we'll let the students go first, and then we'll do our round robin. Eric?
Okay, so first I want to start with saying in terms of, last Friday, so we're already halfway through Q3, and so now it's really putting into perspective how far we are into the year already. APs are soon, they're in May, but it might seem a little far, but it's really just right around the corner. So it's crunch time for students, so very stressful time.
Sir, Senate?
Hello. There's not much to say about SFA Senate right now. Currently we're about to go into elections, so we're holding interviews with potential candidates for these officer positions because we want to make sure that people who are trying to run are qualified. And also a little thing I want to mention is that since daylight savings time was on Sunday, a lot of students are really tired. You can see it in their eyes, including me. So it's been really hard on us.
Another exciting opportunity that some of the Senate students have been granted is that those who are members of the PTSA committee, which you guys know that we're working on that mental health project, are going with our school's NAMI, which is National Alliance on Mental Illness, and our Sources of Strength, which is another mental health club that we have at our school, are going to the Albany Capitol tomorrow to advocate for new curriculum around mental health, which one of them is that there's new curriculum for 10th grade health classes that give more resources to students. So that's something that some of the Senate is going tomorrow.
That's exciting. That's cute.
That's awesome. We'll go around board comments. I'm going to allow the board to go on first. So Petra, anything that you want?
I'm positive I'm not going to be the last person to say this, but the musical, come on. It was ridiculous. You guys did a fantastic job. Congratulations to everybody backstage, on stage, the pit crew, the adults who were performing in the background. I mean, we had several teachers that were playing for hours and hours and hours. Just ridiculous, fantastic job, and I'm so grateful to have been here.
Carla?
I also want to say something about the musical. It's probably one of the best I've ever seen. Believe me, I've been invited to 30 of them myself. So I have to honestly say that this particular performance was beyond a high school level. It was wonderful. You should be very proud of what you did. It was terrific. I was hoping there would be somebody in the audience would come up to you and say, think I wanna talk to you about a performance. I know, but it was wonderful, and I really hope a lot of people got to see it. It's great.
Patrice?
I'll piggyback on that, I'm sure everyone will, but I had to keep reminding myself that these are high school students, and this is a high school performance, but I had to keep reminding myself of that. Also the cross-country team, the girls' cross-country team, was honored by the Senate at the end of February, which was kind of nice. That was nice to see.
I just want to reiterate again, I think the mental health initiative is tremendous, so kudos to all of you. I know I mentioned it in our last meeting. And also good luck to our athletes that are, tryouts this week for our spring sports, super, super exciting. And that's it, so thank you all for being here.
Okay, so I have to say something a little bit more about that musical. I just have to, I feel the same way. I've never seen one, and it's gonna be a very high bar to get above next year. But I also wanted to give, recognize, she's new to the district, Ms. Dombeck Fuller. She co-directed the show with Mr. Bradley Gregg, and he had pointed out that, she has 18 years of experience prior to coming to Shen in musical theater, and that a lot of the risks that they took was at her urging or nudging, and we all benefited from that. So I wanted to just mention her by name. I know that she's new to the district, and I'm so excited for what's going to come next. And Carly, you probably see these lovely cards sitting here.
Yes.
It's from the Scano students that you read to, so it's very sweet. So we went in, it was Monday, and it was Read Across America, so we went into a classroom and read to students. And the students wrote thank yous back to us. It's very, very sweet. So I wanted to
Just to let
thank
you
the
know,
class for that.
I went to 2 different classrooms. One of them has already decided that I'm coming back to, because I'm reading the book they're reading now with their teacher. I told them I would read it. And they've decided that I have to come back now and talk to them about the book. So we're gonna working that up in a couple
Yeah, but
weeks.
you have now an ongoing book club.
Yeah.
With the elementary students, which is lovely. I'm there, I'm totally with you, and that was it. Mary Ellen?
Yeah, musical, phenomenal, and I attended also with a person that is a musical person at Shaker, and just said, she is in a competition, I guess, but she said that was beyond, like, the set design, everything, so.
So we're on our downward slide. It is March. We're gonna start talking about budget tonight. You're hearing the close of athletics for winter. Some of them are moving ahead. Our Shen hockey team, freaking amazing. We have a female athlete on that team, which is outstanding. And we're heading into spring sports. We're heading into SATs. This is the slide right into June. So buckle up. It becomes very busy from here on out, but I think looking at national news, as grim as some days can be, the sun is shining bright here at Shenendehowa. So having said that, this is a business meeting, so we do take public comments, but I'm just gonna read the blurb before we do that. This is an opportunity for residents to address the Board of Education. The board reminds residents that the public comment portion of our meeting is only one item on a long agenda. We therefore ask that each speaker be as succinct as possible and that all remarks be limited to 2 or 3 minutes. In an effort to ensure that the widest number of community viewpoints are heard, the board asks members or groups or the public to withhold comment if their viewpoints have already been presented. We would also expect that residents speak in a respectful and courteous manner so as to model proper civility and decorum for our students. Pursuant to Board Policy 3220, board members will not address specific comments from the public or answer questions regarding a specific staff member, student, as it is confidential information. District residents may also send questions, comments via boe@shenschools.org All questions, comments come into the Office of Public Information and are shared with the board and superintendent. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions, concerns are typically addressed by the superintendent and/or designee. And so please provide your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. In front of me, do we have anybody tonight that's going to come up and make a comment? Okay, let's roll.
Hello, my name is Nico Piscolio. I attend Tech Valley High School that the Board of Education, helps me go to. I'm very glad for you guys allowing me to go to TVHS for all these 4 years. It's really impacted me. I've been able to, set my goals and my plans, and it's helped me see where I want to go. I've been able to shadow, been able to go out and see what I want to do in the world, and it's really allowed me to open my eyes and broaden my view. So I just want to thank you guys so much for allowing me to have this awesome opportunity and allowing me to see my future for what it is. So thank you once again so much for allowing me to do this. And I do hope that my children will be able to attend this school in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
That's from the heart. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Chris O'Hara. I live at 1 Stony Heights Court, Clifton Park. I'm here to support our Plainsman petition you may have heard of. I'd like to thank at the outset Principal Augustinoni and Athletic Director LeVar, who are here tonight, for their open and forthright engagement in willingness to discuss our request during a recent meeting of the Mascot Committee. I will address 3 main areas to our current situation: the board's decision to remove the Plainsman nickname, recent developments and opportunities for possibly restoring it, and most importantly, the need for greater engagement and direct feedback on this issue, regardless of the outcome. I was here in September 2024 when the decision to remove the Plainsman name was made. The vote was 4-1, with board member Thompson bravely voting no. But what I remember most about that meeting was the sense of reluctance and resignation, I think generally expressed by the superintendent and all board members prior to the vote. You were all standing in the face of serious threats of legal consequence and financial aid removal, and did what you thought had to be done at the time, and I certainly understand that. However, I also remember over many years prior to that decision that this board also maneuvered more than once to keep the Plainsman name as long as possible. So I believe it's accurate to state that our name was finally removed, more under threat and duress, rather than the preference and direction of this board. But there's hope that it may be possible to reverse that decision yet and restore the Plainsman name to its place in our community. Recent investigations by the Department of Education at the federal level have found that Native American names and logos are in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Rather serious. Unfortunately, we can't get into the details tonight, but I will, ahead of Mr. Finkenbinder, a Native American who's going to speak to you tonight too, thank him for traveling here to help inform us of his organization's commitment to help repeal these ill-conceived directives from New York State and enable a return to a policy of assimilation with, rather than discrimination against, our Native American neighbors. Finally, there's a need for direct community engagement and feedback to help our school board and community get through the next step of this process or issue. The annual school budget is right around the corner, and we are at almost 400 petition signers who respectfully request a formal and documented poll to measure their preference for either designating a new school mascot as planned for this fall, or continuing to work toward restoring the Plainsman name and continue its 75-year history here at Shenendehowa. How that might be done is up to you. but I know from many interactions with fellow residents, we care deeply about the issue and feel deserving of registering our preferences with the school board and our community before further actions are taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me speak. Aho, greetings. Imachi yapi wanblio hiti kagate kanji upi itana. My Indian name is Brave Eagle. I am an enrolled member of the Crow Creek Sioux Tribe in South Dakota. My birth name is David Finkenbinder. I am Vice President of Native American Guardians Association, NAGA, NAGA. I, as an American Indian, and recognized as such by the federal government, along with my tribe, since 1868, respectfully wish to clarify what I believe to be false and racist assumptions. But first I must address a very important issue. You do not have a mascot. A mascot is a person or actual object performing before crowds. You do, however, have a respectful logo, symbol, or icon, just as almost every legitimate organization ascribes to, which separates you from other schools and like-minded entities. Under the current standard being pushed, should you choose to remove all so-called Indian identifiers such as plainsmen, you must remove the very name Shenendehowa, for it is an Iroquois word, people of the plains. Since you decide to adopt policy of anti-discrimination, you can't pick and choose, this race is fine, that race is not fine, without actually becoming racist yourself, and in fact discriminating. Sure, you can find an Indian to oppose the use, but for nearly 30 years, every legitimate independent poll, of which there are many, have concluded 80 to 90% of American Indians support the use and oppose the removal of our names and images, and that's a fact. I will remind you of another undeniable fact. Each and every one of you have a country to go back to find your heritage, should you wish. For the American Indian, this is our country of origin. Once removed from here, it is gone forever. This is what is being proposed through this disseminator actions. NAGA is currently in a lawsuit against the state of New York education system for its clear violation of a number of U.S. and state constitutional articles and statutes concerning discrimination. We knew from the beginning we would be up against partisan black robes that would dismiss our lawsuit using lack of standing as justification to deny a full debate in open court. Let this sink in for a moment. Indians have no standing in Indian issues. Make that make sense. We have no illusions. The U.S. Supreme Court is where justice will finally prevail and not partisan force. We're in the final steps towards reaching the U.S. Supreme Court, where this type of issue has already been addressed concerning the slants and Asian band trademark issue focused on racial discrimination. And I'd suggest looking that up, it's quite interesting. Before you make your final decision, which sounds like it's already been made, I am respectfully asking that you wait until after we win the Supreme Court decision. Then you can make a better informed decision, not feel pressured by the cancel culture movement to eradicate my heritage from my country of origin, the great United States of America. Wopila, Ikaya, and Tube Washte. Have a great day. And I do have something I'd like to hand out to you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I didn't see your name on there, so you don't get it
Follow David around. I have a letter for you guys too. Thank you.
I didn't see your name on there either. There'll be another one.
Thank you.
Hey, Petra.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for all you do. This is,
Sandy, you said-
there it is. Petra.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, ma'am, how are you? Sorry, I didn't think one could hours.
Thank you, thank you.
Vice President, right?
Thank you so much.
Very nice. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Oh,
Oh.
Thank you so much.
I gotta run and read.
Thank you.
No, you're fine.
Give me one with your name.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Shearer. I'm the historian for the town of Clifton Park. And I'm here to support the restoration of the Plainsman to Shenendehowa. Just to give you a little history lesson, Queen Anne of England granted a land patent to land speculators here in 1708. It was quite a while ago, 1708. And the patent was made to land speculators who in turn were to find settlers to settle on this land and make it their homes. Because of the wars that were going on at the time, French and Indian War, it was not mapped until 1765. So the name of this land patent was the Clifton Park Patent, and it included most of the present-day land of Clifton Park. And when the town of Clifton Park was formed in 1828, the last town to be formed in Saratoga County, it took the name of Clifton Park because it was already being called Clifton Park at that time because of the land patent. However, the Native Americans had another name for this land patent, and it was Shenendehowa. And on the map on the various maps of the Clifton Park patent, it always says alias Shenendehowa patent. And so our town could have been called Shenendehowa, but they chose Clifton Park. However, when the school district centralized in July of 1950, they chose the name Shenendehowa because of the land patent and the Native American usage of that. Shenendehowa is a Haudenosaunee word. We don't use Iroquois anymore because it turns out that Iroquois was the name that the white settlers used for these Native Americans, and it actually is derogatory. So we're going back to what they called themselves, which is the Haudenosaunee. Well, at any rate, and it means a grassy plain. So, I mean, it really makes sense that the sports teams chose that name, Plainsman. It's a geographical feature. It really has nothing to do with Native Americans, so it really can't be offensive or derogatory. As I say, it's a geographical description of land. And if you know Clifton Park, it's very flat. The highest point in Clifton Park is where the Clifton Park Center Baptist Church is. That hill is the highest point. And so it does describe the area. And in 1950, when 22 school districts were combined, centralized to form Shenendehowa School, they chose the name Shenendehowa, and the sports teams became the Plainsmen. Makes perfect logical sense. I don't see how that can, be bothersome to anybody at this point. So anyway, I would urge you to reconsider and hopefully retain a 70-year tradition. Thank you.
Always comes with great information. I think we need him as a history teacher.
Good evening, my name is Ann Connolly, 12 Aldependence Lane, Clifton Park.
And I never met you. Oh,
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Many schools in Shen have Native American names that have special meaning. If you put all those meanings together to describe Shenendehowa Central School District, you have a balanced environment for education that has spirit, encourages achievement, friendship, peace, and understanding. This is honoring Native Americans. I understand funding is paramount. However, I'm concerned removing the Plainsman name was done too quickly. Let's just take a step back and look at this logic. Imagine there's a school teacher somewhere in here, okay? If I was a student at Shen, and a teacher asked me to tell them that the definition of plainsman, and I said, it's a Native American, they would say I'm incorrect. A plainsman is a person who has the ability to survive in a flat, open prairie or grassland environment. Its meaning does not apply strictly to Native Americans. Shenendehowa's meaning is Great Plains. It makes sense using the name plainsman. I don't quite understand what the issue is of non-compliance in the name plainsman. In the future, educators will look at this and wonder why the definition of plainsman was misunderstood and removed after 70+ years. Perhaps the name plainsman was removed too quickly in error. Please consider putting this issue on a poll where residents can voice. Do we want to keep plainsman? Do we want to lose it forever? The definition of plainsman is not disrespectful to Native Americans. Presently, I question if there is an error in removing the plainsman name due to a misunderstanding in the definition. There is a good possibility this question could very well come up in the future. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay. Thank you very much for those comments tonight, Vess. I expect that we don't have anything else. With that, Dr. Wilson-Turner, do you want to go to your report?
Thank you. I do want to give a brief superintendent's report, still related to budget, and so I'll jump into that. I would be remiss if I didn't equally praise the musical. I sat in the second section, and so I got to see the students come across the stage, back and around, and then I realized there were students behind me. But to your point, Naomi, the vocals of the children, the notes that they held, the choreography that went along with it, it was a tremendous performance, and our students just shine everywhere. As Deanna mentioned, athletics, we had so many sectional competitions that I tried to, talk to Mr. Rivera and say, which ones can I try to squeeze in and get to just to see our kids shine? And that is absolutely the highlight of the work that we do, is being able to see you all excel in the many ways that you do. So I thank the board for their commentary and their students and our staff for that continued support for that excellence. So this time of year, we receive what is called the One House Budget Proposal. And so it's not formal, these are aspirational proposals, but it gives us a sense of where we may see some movement from the governor's proposal to what the actual final budget will be. So this is what the Senate is proposing at this juncture. I will try to stick to the things that are specific to education that were shared with me just before the board meeting today. And there may be more to come, and if that is the case, I'll be sure to place that in the Friday bulletin so you have a comprehensive summary of what those proposals entail. So we also, just briefly, we did our own advocacy as a school district. Some board members joined me a few weeks ago to meet with our representatives, and then on Friday I had the opportunity as a part of the BOCES Legislative Committee to do advocacy on the part of the, what we call the Greater 24 of the Cap Region BOCES. And we met with some of our representatives as well to reinforce some common advocacy points that we all have. And some of those are represented here, one of which is to increase the foundation aid due minimum from 1% to 2%. So just over 60% of districts only received a 1% foundation aid in the current governor's proposal. You'll see later in our budget presentation, that's just less than $500,000 for us at Shenendehowa, so 2%, and any percent after that would help us as we try to move in the direction of our preservation programs. And so also there are some proposals to incorporate changes to the foundation aid formula that would benefit all schools. Again, you'll see this in our board presentation as we try to provide additional services and support for our neediest students. And so one of those proposals is to add a 0.12 weighting to students experiencing homelessness or foster care, increasing the English language learner weighting to 0.6, and that would increase foundation aid for schools who have high populations of those students, and that would be beneficial to most districts in our capital region BOCES. They would increase building and transportation aid payments for certain high needs school districts, add $10 million of civic education, accept the executive pre-kindergarten proposal. So remember that proposal is to raise the per pupil allocation we are able to provide from what is currently for us $5,400 to $10,000, which may help attract additional providers and allow us to maximize the funds that we currently receive. That proposal, however, also would require us to have universal pre-K for any family who is invested in it within 2 years' time, so by 2028. And so that comes with some particular challenges that we've articulated as well. Staying with what's relevant for us, reject the proposal to freeze the school aid database, which would prevent future year adjustments, and to make school district make-ready costs for storage and other infrastructure upgrades related to the zero-emission bus transition eligible for building aid. So there's been a tremendous amount of advocacy around the zero-emission bus and revising that mandate so that it becomes something that's manageable for schools. It is well-intentioned, but it is extremely costly, the transition that needs to happen, and a whole host of other challenges that we've discussed in our prior advocacy. So there is some continued advocacy there. Expand the farm to school program to allow breakfast and snack purchases to count towards 30% metric. Establish a Community Schools Act, establish an Artificial Intelligence Literacy Act, establish an Underrepresented Teachers of Tomorrow program, and accept the executive proposal to require evidence-based math instruction for grades K through 5, were some of the highlights from that proposal. So you'll see some of those things echoed in the budget presentation that you'll see this evening in terms of how they impact us. And as I said, as we find out more information or highlights from the One House budget proposal, I will bring those forward to the Board of Education. And that concludes my report.
Thank you for that. Right off, hot off the press. My only announcement that I wanted to make, superintendent search, just our transparent comment, is that we're still in contract discussion. We're hoping in the next 2 weeks to be able to announce and again, start a new chapter for Shenendehowa. So looking forward to that. Our board, I know I and my board colleagues are as well. So it's been a great process. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask Mr. LeBaire and Mr. Agostinoni to come forward, and they are not giving a full presentation. They give a full presentation earlier in the fall about the approach that we had planned to take in reviewing a new mascot for Shenendehowa, which was brought forward to us by our student senate. And so I'm going to actually allow them to speak, but I'm going to just put the slide presentation on the timeline so people have a sense of what the process has been and what it will be going forward. So I'll turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Then we have Lucas give most of it, 'cause he's done, credit to him, he's done a lot of the work facilitating. So I'll jump in, but he's gonna drive this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me in to give an update to the board. I know we have a couple of the board members that are on the committee and been able to join us for some of the work we've been doing. Just a bit of a recap to go back, you know, as Dr. Wilson-Turner mentioned, we had student groups come forward with an interest to begin a search for a new mascot. As we heard referenced before earlier tonight, the Plainsman moniker was removed in 2024 by a vote of the board, and we have not had a name since. And so the movement really began with the students, which is the first thing that I do want to kind of reiterate for the board here. Mr. Agostinoni and I, as you probably remember, presented in November a rough plan for our committee and a request for that work to begin, which was approved and supported, and so we have begun that work. And so I just wanted to offer a recap of what we've done so far this fall and this winter. We created a committee of many different stakeholders. We tried to make that committee as large and inclusive as we could while still making it small enough to function. We have representatives of teachers, of staff, of parents, of community members, administrators, myself, Mr. Agostinoni, students, of course. So I do think it's a pretty, and board members as well. So it's a pretty inclusive and a pretty representative group of folks that have been doing the work of the mascot committee since we formed it. Our first goal, in line with the timeline here, was to start to use a couple of different means to gather as much feedback as we could. Part of that certainly came from conversations among the committee. So one of our first meetings was really a conversation primarily of that group to start to get some thoughts and ideas and some history and background and people's feelings on the topic from the group that represented, you know, many different stakeholder organizations. The next step that we took in line with the plan was to create a survey to go out to the greater Shen community to ask them their input on what a mascot means to them, what they feel most connected with in terms of a mascot in the Shen community, to ask for ideas about things that they might feel would be a good idea. And we included kind of a broad range of questions. Some of them were kind of Likert scales to get a sense of where people stood on certain issues. Some of them were open-ended questions. Some of them asked for open comments and feedback. We were thankful enough to get almost 1,000 responses, which was much more than we maybe had anticipated. Many of them were students, but we also had a large showing of faculty and staff, and then we also had roughly about 100 folks that identified themselves as community members primarily. So we were able to then analyze that information received from the feedback. We did that manually, but then we also used some AI tools actually to kind of try to draw out some common themes, some common verbiage, some common ideas and trends that we saw within that data. And then the committee went to work kind of examining that and discussing that at the next meeting. Then at that point, we wanted to continue with the next step, which was to kind of open up another option for folks that maybe were not on the committee or able to share thoughts with the committee and maybe were not able to share or did not choose to share with the survey. And so we set up several focus group events that we advertised, one in the evening and one in the morning, so Mr. Augusto and I were there for those. We did not have a huge turnout, but we did have some folks come out from community and alumni groups. We had some parents that were there. We had some teachers there, and they shared some thoughts and some ideas. Wide variety of input from both those sources that kind of have started to guide us towards, making a little bit more of a decision moving forward. And so at our last meeting, taking in and looking at all that feedback from those different sources, we did start to compile a list, a very early draft list of what we thought would be some ideas that might have enough momentum or enough support to move forward. A lot of our conversations really took a deep dive at those suggestions that had been brought up through those different sources of feedback to take a look at some questions based on this proposal, based on the survey data. Things like, would this be something that could be timeless? We don't want to choose a name or a moniker or an image or a mascot that's going to be something that needs to be re-examined in a few years or has lost popularity or is not relevant anymore. So we wanted it to be timeless. We wanted to look closely at any issues that might arise in terms of questioning, or challenging the decision moving forward, much like we faced with the Plainsman. So, for example, there were a lot of suggestions related to the horse. The horse has been a longtime symbol at Shen, and so there were a lot of ideas revolving around something related to horse by nature. But some of those suggestions maybe were too male-oriented, or some of them were not relevant to the area. There was different topics that we looked at to really kind of take a close look through a lot of different lenses at each of those suggestions. So at this point, it's still a very long list. We still have work to do as a committee to kind of look to narrow that down to a couple of choices that we think will be best to then put out to a vote. And so the next step, if you look at the timeline, is that we're hoping at our next meeting, which is at the end of this month, to narrow that list down to a shorter list of suggestions that we think would be acceptable, that we think would be good choices, and look to put together a voting process. And the idea is to grant a vote to all of our students in the secondary level, high school, and then some of the upper middle school levels. And this is primarily because those are the students that really live the mascot at the high school level through sports and through their engagement with the high school coming up. All of our elementaries have their own mascot. We certainly want to involve them as well. We've had some talks with Lisa Kissinger, who's the chair of social studies, the academic administrator for social studies, and she had a great idea about looking to involve those elementaries in a different way by creating some lessons that can be taught to them for some mock election and kind of educating them about the election process, and then using that lesson and that experience of the kids to let them kind of have a voice even if it's not part of the official voting process. So the idea is to work towards narrowing that list, putting together a voting process, and putting that out in the spring to all faculty and staff, all employees of Shen, all students at the high school and upper middle school level to get their feedback on the choices. And we want to make sure that when that vote goes out or when that when that selection process happens, that people have a full picture of what the offerings are. And so as a means of doing that, our committee is also going to work on creating a small, maybe paragraph length description of each selection, each mascot or each logo suggestion, so that people have a full understanding of kind of the background of where that idea came from, what it means, what it might represent. And then we're also using art students at the high school to do some mock-ups of different sample images, with a clear distinction that the images they'll see as part of the voting process will not necessarily be the official, mascot or logo or image. That'll be determined later if and when the board approves things. But just to give people an idea of what some of the visuals might look like or what some possibilities would be as we present some of those options. And so then at that point, after hopefully the voting process occurs late this spring, then we would hopefully meet again to try to put a recommendation to you as a board to consider. And so that's kind of where we're at. Mr. A, I don't know if I missed anything there.
No, it's very comprehensive. I just say the committee's been a robust civil conversation, the focus group, there are differing opinions, but it was just, we've learned a lot throughout the process, as just like this evening, we've learned some things. So it has been a good conversation, and credit to the whole group that comes in. It is a diverse group with a lot of ideas, so I think we're moving forward. I think it gets a little harder now as we say, okay, now we're gonna go from this to this. But it's been a really good conversation. We're excited to get students involved with some of the mock-ups, because I do think you gotta have a visual to go along with some of it, so.
Yeah, I would second that. The committee, I can't thank enough. We got a lot of great members on the committee that are passionate about it and have done a great job of not just bringing their own personal opinions, but really trying to talk things up with different stakeholder groups that they're a part of. I feel like every time we meet, there's even new ideas still coming forward, which is great to see. So it's been a very creative process that's been enjoyable to be a part of, and we're hoping to continue that work and hopefully later this year have a recommendation for you as a board to consider.
And a lot of folks are really focused on the connection to our community or to our school, so everything that has come forward, it somehow is connected to our school, so there is that tradition feeling, and with losing a name, a new one that would still have some kind of connection. So everything we've had, there's some type of connection as people are talking about it. And then when you get the paragraph or you hear someone speak about it, like, oh, it's even more connected than I thought. So I really do think that the connection, the paragraph to go with the name is important too when people are kind of looking at the choices.
I have a question. Is the intent to replace the Shen logo? You know, there's a Shen logo on our field and things like that. Is it to go with it?
My understanding is that we have, without giving up too much information, we have settled, we like green, right?
Yes.
No one's going
Yes,
away
we
from
like
green. And I think the Shen script has become kind of iconic. It's almost been equated to, maybe because Lisa Kissinger's on the committee, we've talked about the Michigan M a couple times, right?
Yeah.
That's like, the Shen script has turned into like, almost like a symbol of Shen, almost sometimes more so than what the mascot is, that script. So I think we've talked about keeping that script, keeping the color. People seem to really like that.
Yeah, I would second that. I think both from like a nostalgia standpoint as well as a financial standpoint, the Shen emblem has been put everywhere as a replacement to the Plainsman. I think it's something that's very recognizable. It's associated with us as a high school, as a district, as an athletic program. And I don't think that there has been any strong feelings expressed in the committee work or in the feedback about looking to remove that totally. I think it would be an addition to that.
Okay. I just wanted to say one thing about, I think this process is so phenomenal because it did come from the students and they really drove it. But it is just such a mirror of what they'll deal with in the business world, that this, coming together, learning about branding and really being a part of it and taking in all the aspects, the history, the connection, the community. It's such a powerful illustration, and then talking about what's happening at the elementary schools, that's phenomenal, using it as an opportunity for, a voting, simulation. It's great. I just, you're handling it in just a fantastic open way. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. It's been enjoyable, and again, the credit really goes to all the committee members who have been, really contributing a lot of time and ideas, and both in the committee work and as well as outside. Every meeting people come with new stuff. We had one of our teachers in the district actually came with a whole presentation that he put together with historical documents and such. So people are really getting into it. It's been really neat, and I think that a point you made is an important one. I do feel that this really should be something for the students. I know that as alumni of my high school or college or wherever we might have gone, we kind of had our chance to live that. And I think that looking to the students now, the students in the future, I think they have to have a central voice in this, and I think they have so far, obviously with a lot of other stakeholders as well, but I'm happy that they've been an active part of it. I would have been disappointed if that wasn't the case.
How many people are on the committee?
We have about 40 members, but typically about 30 each meeting, because people do have conflicts. We intentionally made it a pretty large committee so that we could, have good representation at each meeting.
We fill this room here.
Yeah, I want to say it's about 38 or 40 members, but I think most meetings we've had at least 25 to 30 in attendance. And it's been a good variety of folks as well.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
and I will say it's an active conversation, like there's no lull in conversation. People do their homework before they get there.
Yeah.
And the conversation is great, and I love the fact that you both met with, other community members who, as you heard tonight, right, that was important. I think it continues to be important. I know you've opened the door to them to also, join, right? And going along with, I left you all the other night when you were talking about how we're gonna incorporate the middle school in the voting. But each decision point you make is very thoughtful. So that I really truly appreciate, and the part that becomes a civic readiness for everybody is pretty cool too, especially for our students. So I think, and I commented both to you both that night, it's great work that you're doing. So you should be very proud.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, and just to comment on your, one of your statements, at those focus groups, we did have, a large number of community opinions coming in. And one of the challenges there is it's kind of, in my mind, two different topics. I think that working to select a new mascot moving forward based on the student interest is one work that we're doing as a committee. There are some folks that are looking at, is there a chance or is there a possibility of reviving the Plainsman, but that's kind of a separate issue. The board, back in 2024, as you guys know, made a decision to remove that based on state guidance. And in my role and the committee's role, we've been tasked with leading the stakeholders to come up with a new idea to be considered. So again, glad to hear their thoughts and opinions, and as you said, we did welcome them to join the committee as well. And we did share the feedback that they gave us in the focus group with the committee as a whole as well to consider. So we do want it to be inclusive, but we also want to stay focused on what our task as a committee, what our charge has been with this group.
Great work. Excellent, thank you.
Thanks so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So linked here is the Board of Education candidate information, as we will have 2 seats open for the Board of Education this coming May as a part of our budget vote. And so there is a strict timeline by which this information has to be shared. And so the board has it in advance for review, and I just want to double check, which I believe is built in here, that the petitions are due on April 21st, and so people can use this paper version, but the packet will also be made available online on the board page for any interested candidates. And I can't remember what I was talking to, maybe it was board leadership, we were talking about the number of signatures required for this year is 45. That is determined each year by the percentage of, based on the percentage of voter turnout the year before. So I think it's up 3 required signatures from last year. And they must be returned to the district clerk's office no later than 5 p.m. on April 20th, 2026.
Do you have copies here?
I don't. Do we have copies here tonight, Vanessa?
I have a hard copy currently, so I'll have to if someone wants it.
Thank you.
I have copies.
I'm gonna turn.
Okay, so in our last meeting, we started to talk about BOCES and what it meant to be a BOCES member, and we explained, and so for this year, the BOCES seat is up. It is a 3-year, I'm just gonna read it because then we'll take the nomination for it. This year, there are 4 seats up for election on the BOCES board. Each term is for a period of 3 years. It has been our past practice to have representation from throughout our geographic region. In keeping with the practice in this year's election, 2 seats will go to individuals in the Schenectady County component schools. 1 seat will go to an individual from Albany, and 1 seat will go to Saratoga County. So at this point, Naomi, historically, has had this seat. She is currently president of the BOCES board. So first of all, I want to thank you with gratitude for your time spent on that board. I know it takes time out of everything else that you do. So thank you for that. And for tonight, we will, as Shenendehowa, be nominating Naomi to go forward in that election that will take place. So I'm going to ask for the action to take place now, if that's okay with everybody. We can be done with it. So the board nominates Naomi. Can I have a motion? Carl is first. Petra is second. All in favor?
Can I go?
You can. So
I just want to say I am very grateful. It is work that I do very much enjoy. I also appreciate Burnt Hills, Boston Lake's support as well. It does mean so much to me. And I know that someone else could have stepped forward to serve. But one thing that I would, and so I do appreciate the opportunity that I can continue to serve. But I also want to emphasize, anyone that's interested in learning more about BOCES, please come with me to the events. They're really inspiring. We just had one for women in trade. And the one thing one quote that I feel that all of you around this table would appreciate is that empowered women empower women. And so please let that sink in. It is so true, and I do believe it with my whole heart. But please come with me to these events. I'll try to do better informing you. You do get the emails from BOCES about the upcoming events and board meetings, but I'll try to also reach out and let you know about ones that I think you might really enjoy. But like with that young man from Tech Valley High School, you would go to his graduation. So you get to see him twice. You get to see him on Shen stage, and you get to see him on Tech Valley's stage. So it's really it opens your world up to a lot of things that are that we can come back and talk about them for our students too, the opportunities for our students. So again, thank you.
And just so an informational item, Burnt Hills, Boston Lake will take their nomination tomorrow night, and Naomi's already reached out, so they will be nominating Naomi tomorrow night at their board meeting.
So good evening again. Tonight we will put forth the first draft proposal of our 2026-27 budget with some level of expenditure and analysis. And I will just, as we step into this presentation, at our last board meeting, you'll remember that we had an extensive presentation around our mid-year goals. And that's very intentionally done, really to paint a picture of all of the work that occurs in the district to advance our district mission, goals, and essential objectives. But it also serves as the foundation for this budget process. It ensures that we stay true to the programming, the goals, and the essential objectives that we've identified as most valuable for our organization, and that we use our budget to commit to sustaining those pieces. And so our frequent refrain has been that we take a measured approach to the budget process to ensure repeatable successes. And that means that we want to ensure that the opportunities that students had last year exist again the next year, and that there aren't huge dips or swings or changes in what the experience is like here at Shen, either towards positive or the negative. We want that consistently high quality educational experience here for us. Linked in our presentation, and we'll be moving forward for every budget presentation, is our budget development calendar, and this gives you a sense of what is coming next. And actually, it gives you a great picture of how long the budget process actually takes. So we've started this conversation in October to get here to you in March. And I think if you look for next week's meeting, we will have our bus resolution proposal in front of you, so you have a sense of what we need to invest in our buses as well. So this is our graphic that actualizes our mission, which will be embedded in each of our presentations, and I took us through that in our preliminary budgets and assumptions. Followed by one of our district goals, which is fiscal responsibility, which really speaks to how we strategically utilize our resources to make sure that we create that consistent experience. Our Shenendehowa learning framework, which is the focus of all that we do because it places our students at the center as our why. And as you will see and you know that 80% of our budget goes to our instructional staff and programming that centers around our students. This graphic wasn't shared in a previous presentation, and it's an important one because it's one that undergirds the budget process. And it's the three key questions we continue to ask ourselves as we go through the budget process from October until we get to budget vote day. And that is, our goal in creating a budget is to always look through the needs of our students through an equity lens so that all students get what they need to arrive at their full potential. That it is inclusive, that we make sure that the classroom experience is relevant and students can see themselves there. That it is diverse and that we are responsive to the emerging needs and changes both within our school community and without. And one of my favorite words is that it's axiomatic, that it's a given that we are going to provide a high quality education for every student who walks through our door, and that our efforts always go towards that. So the challenges, assumed realities, and opportunities are consistent from our assumptions and projections presented last time. There are some consistent challenges that we've considered throughout this entire budget. Healthcare costs, we've talked about several times. That is something that every district is facing. Limited foundation aid, we talked about that just a moment ago. We are currently scheduled to get 1%. With the advocacy, hopefully for 2%, every little bit helps. We are pretty safe around our federal funds. We do see some fluctuation from year to year, but we keep that on our radar because we have key staff that provide those equitable resources to students that we want to make sure we're able to sustain. I'll talk a little bit more about our tax growth factor towards the end of the presentation and how that factors into our tax cap. And we've had a constant refrain on how focused we are on the increased staffing and resources needed for our new full-day kindergarten building in Trio. Our assumed reality is always academic and operational excellence, the continued expansion of learning opportunities, and always positioning ourselves so that we can address any unanticipated needs. And you'll see a bit of that at the end of the presentation as well. And our opportunities remain that we have a fiscally strong position from 25-26. We continue to effectively manage our retirements, vacancies, and attrition, and focus on targeted professional learning. And we pay close attention to our enrollment patterns and anticipate a modest increase in kindergarten. I believe we're at I'm looking at Ms. McKenna, 520, 524? Look at that, that's how, every day we're looking at these numbers. 524 with over 100 that could still potentially register. And so we're just keeping a close eye on that because all of those things will drive what we are able to provide in programming. So we feel pretty confident that our health costs will come in around the 10% to 15% mark. We are hoping more for the 10% mark. We predict as best we can because remember healthcare costs are changing at January and we build our budget from July until June. And so we have to predict what those mid-year shifts can be. We anticipate a potential reduction in TRS from 9.5% to 8.24 and an increase in ERS rates, and that will come into play when we look at how we're using our revenues and reserves to offset that. And as I mentioned, we look at equity and outcomes, program expansion, enrollment, and the implications of our special education program review, and so you will see that mirrored in the FTEs and programming requests that are proposed currently in the budget. We always take a look at our safety and cybersecurity and technology, and we have to plan thoughtfully about what we purchase because ultimately those things have to be replaced through obsolescence planning. You've seen our advocacy around bus electrification, yet we still are planning for what we are required to do within the timeline required. And we are in our final phase, let's say, of our multi-year phasing of kindergarten staffing as well as equipment and resources. We will try to balance both purchases this year and next year to ensure that we have everything in place for the new building. And we continue to manage our $85 million capital project. The only part people hear about that is AC coming to the middle school, and that is our biggest project coming forward for the summer. So now we'll get into some of the actual implications for our expenditures for our budget and some of our revenues. So we begin the season with looking at what our anticipated retirements are, and those have been submitted. And to date, we have 17 instructional retirements, and you can see them broken out by level. 7 elementary, 3 middle school, 6 high school, and 1 district-wide. And at this juncture, we do anticipate replacing all of those retirements. And the assumption is always, I shouldn't say always, the assumption this year is at step 4, and some of that is based on the changes in the contract that we just approved and how step 4 will allow us to still be competitive as we seek new employees that come to the district and yet still realize the savings from a step 4 employee versus an employee that just retired. Then our first bucket that we look at is what are we required to do and what do we need to do for our learners who need the most. And so you will notice that we will need to add 3 special education teachers to elementary school. I think you will have seen a pattern, at least in my time here, where each year we've had to add some form of special education staff, whether it's teachers, whether it's aides, whether it's psychologists or behavior specialists, so that we can continue to service the needs of the students who are coming to us, and to make sure they are best prepared to receive their education. And so we will do that for elementary schools. We have a need for a 1.0 ENL teacher at the middle school, and that has come out of some intensive work led by Ms. McKenna and Mr. Davis with our middle school administrators to really take a look at our middle school schedule and make sure it is meeting the needs of all students. What we have found is that if you are an ENL student or a special education student, you have other services that may prevent you from accessing an encore. I call it encore, sorry, it's unified arts. I will learn that vocabulary. Unified arts. And so in maximizing the scheduling resources that they took a look at, the request that came out of that was for a 1.0 ENL teacher to increase access to more classes for our neediest students, so they get that complete experience. We have a request for a special education aide for middle school to assist with testing accommodations and any additional supports as we try to bring teaming to reality for more students at the middle school. And we continue to look at the contractual increases for out-of-district placements as we look for programming to support students who have additional needs than we are able to provide for within district. Yet still remaining the district that has the least number of students that send students for out-of-district placement. So you'll remember we've talked a lot about the Recovs grant that really helped us do a significant investment into mental health supports. And so that grant will come to an end at the end of this school year. And so this year, and I believe last year also, we paid for 60% of the salaries of these staff members. We will now assume full 100% funding of these staff members in our general fund budget, and all of these positions from the original Recovs grant will be sustained. You've heard Mr. Davis talk about the significant impact of our attendance teacher, our student support counselors. We brought on 6th grade help, which has expanded the social emotional learning and mental wellness preparation for our elementary students who are transitioning to middle school that first year. And the Alternatives to Suspension Aid was really a thoughtful project in partnership with Mr. Davis and Mr. Agostinoni to think about ways that we keep students who are maybe struggling behaviorally in school connected to the school as they make their way back into after some disciplinary infractions. And you heard our Student Senate talk about NAMI and Sources of Strength. That also is funded through some ECA units through the Recovs grant that we will make sure to pick up in the general fund as well. So our biggest investment this year is a very exciting one, and I'm glad that Ms. Ryan is here in the audience with us because she's been doing a tremendous job at starting the hiring process for ATRIA. And that requires that we hire 62 FTEs. That is not the total number of staff that will be in that building. It's closer to 85, I should know it by heart by now. But what we did, and we'll talk about this process a little bit toward the end, is we looked at what resources currently exist in our schools and how those could be reallocated by the number of students who are coming out of our elementary schools to ensure that we were able to be as fiscally responsible as we design the resources for this school. So we will have a total of 30 kindergarten teachers at ATRIA, but right now we only need to hire 10 because our current kindergarten teachers will move over to ATRIA. We will need 2 school psychologists, 2 counselors, 5 special education teachers because we will have the full continuum of special education services at ATRIA with the exception of MOVE, which will remain at TESAGO. An ENL teacher, 2 speech therapists, 1.5 art teacher, 2 music teachers, 1 PE teacher. We will actually have 2 PE teachers, but again, through reallocation, we'll be able to just hire 1. The other one will be an internal move. 1.5 library media specialists. We need much more than 1.0 special education aides. We've been taking a very close look at all of our special education aides and how those can be reallocated to support our programs without adding to the budget. And 10 general aides, either recess aides, classrooms aides, we have tech aides. So there are different aide positions that exist at the elementary level that we will make sure are replicated at ATRIA so they have the full complement of staff. Due to the size of the building, where we anticipate over 600 kindergartners, that ratio does require us to look at least a 2.0 for nurse support. There will be 5 different clerical positions that replicate what exists in current buildings. And as a result of the full continuum of special education services, we will see contractual increases in OT and PT services. And then we will need 11 maintenance staff, and I just want to be clear, while it says ATRIA, those 11 maintenance staff will serve the entire 5 Maxwell building, which is a large building. And we are trying to do some creative things to ensure that we have both coverage for maintenance and facilities in the positions that we are placing there. And in our food service positions, we will need 5 of them, 3 of which will be full-time and 4 part-time, which is what gets you to the 5. But the food service will actually not come out of the general fund budget, it will actually come out of the food service budget because that budget is now self-sufficient, which has been very helpful to us in the budget process. And just some program expansion, so these aren't tied to specific FTEs, but our job, our responsibility, our commitment is to ensure that our students continue to have quality programs even when we are in a situation where we're adding a tremendous amount of staff, and I commend our different staffs at our different levels at the opportunities that will continue to be advanced for our students and that will be able to be sustained. So elementary STEM enrichment is a result of actually work that we started in the negotiation process last year with STA to convert our ELA specialists into STEM enrichment specialists, and actually really enrichment in general so that we can be flexible to what the current educational need is that we need to provide additional supports for students in. And so as a result, every 1st through 5th grade student will have the opportunity to go to STEM enrichment every other week, which will be based on a curriculum designed by Lego Science. And so we're incredibly excited about the investment in those resources, and will potentially look to ensure that the physical space in those classrooms lends itself to have those things constantly set up and able to be manipulated and navigated by our students. Middle school, like I said, spent some time on scheduling, and so now there's going to be some intensive work that happens around planning as they look at how courses are offered in different increments for students. We saw in our IPAC presentation that we'll be able to expand course offerings through the Writing Center and A&P through the creative reallocation of staffing to continue to support that. And then 2 athletic pieces, we are excited about the prospect of bringing on unified bocce ball for our students. If you have never participated in a unified event, you do not know what you are missing. It is probably the best of Shen at any given point in time as we see both our general education students and our special education students work together. And many of our schools in the Suburban Council will have this as an opportunity for our students. And so I just thought it was important. It's a small cost, but I think it will have a significant impact, and that's really to design the space that they need for bocce ball. We also have an opportunity with modified flag football. So we added girls flag football 2 years ago. And so we have the opportunity, again, with some other schools in Suburban Council, some are adding it this year, to add modified flag football next year, again, through a grant through New York Giants, who are willing to support the equipment and uniforms. And so this is really to support the coaching support that will be needed for that. So we're able to bring on 2, I think, impactful opportunities at a smaller cost in comparison to some of our staffing needs. And so we also set aside some funds for our mascot selection process in the event that there is a recommendation that comes forth from the committee that the board is willing to accept. And truly, based on the timing of that recommendation, if it is completed and accepted prior to the end of the school year, we may be able to look at purchasing some things this year in preparation for next year, which would offset some costs for the budget. And then, not to be forgotten, is our incredible operations facilities team. They need resources too in order to make sure that our buildings are maintained in the way that we expect. And so you'll see some key pieces of equipment that will be replaced as part of our obsolescence replacement cycle to ensure that we're able to support our buildings and to support our brand new building, Atria. So in order to get to all of those things, Ms. Wetmore Chase and Ms. Higgins and I spent some quality time together really combing through all of our codes, our staffing codes and our contractual codes, to see where, first we had the opportunity to reallocate existing staff so that we could maximize that, and where we had the opportunity to reduce some codes based on the trends that we see and how those codes have been spent, and use that as a predictor for the coming school year. Then we went back and said, where else can we find resources and revenues to be able to close the gap in order to be able to stay within the tax cap, which will be presented to you momentarily. And so we did have some opportunity to look at health insurance and some prescription RX rebates and see if we were able to boost revenues in that way. We looked at the trends for our energy costs and see where we're able to make adjustments there. We looked very closely at equipment lines, and we had this conversation with our building principals today, that next year's budget will be a little austere in terms of the things that we're able to purchase and replace, because we spent over $1 million outfitting equipment and furniture for our brand new kindergarten building. And we have to be thoughtful again about the obsolescence and replacement plan when we purchase new things. So the number of things we purchase ultimately have to be replaced in that same time frame. So we want to be thoughtful about that. And so that aided us in being able to make some adjustments to the budget. We are also thankful to our technology department who gave us not one, not two, but 6 options we could choose from in terms of a technology budget, and that would still be able to sustain our movement with technology integration, which allows some flexibility there. And so it really is a time-consuming task, but a really thoughtful and strategic one to comb through those codes and make strategic decisions about what we adjust, so that it does not feel like we are coming through and cutting things when we're trying to get to the number that is reasonable to put before our voters. Instead, we are looking thoughtfully at how we are preserving those things that we know are important and ensuring that quality program pursues. I talked a little bit about food service being financially independent, and so thus we are able to also take some resources to reallocate overhead costs from the general fund budget to our food service budget, which freed up some funds. And then I'm going to talk next about the use of reserves within the standards and applicable regulations. And I think I've said this a few times in different spaces. The use of reserves in our fund balance is really intentionally done because you do not want to use your savings account to balance your budget, right? So you're looking at this in ways that how much funds can you use, and know that you'll be able to replace in a reasonable amount of time, and that your budget doesn't become independent upon that. So here, which I'm not going to go through, if you want a little bit more detail, it kind of paints a picture of some of the revenue adjustments that we did to align with our property tax cap, which will be 2.52% this year. In a few slides, you'll see that on average, our tax cap has been almost 3.5%. So this is a change significantly in a time when we're looking at a lot of different resources. It was closer to 3.2 last year, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's still it's impactful, combined with a 1% foundation aid. So really, really thoughtful combing had to be done to get us to this place. So what we anticipate right now, and are putting before the board for consideration, is a preliminary expenditure budget of just over $234 million, about $11 million more than last year. The revenue sources that we have available to us is our foundation aid is about $47.8 million, up from about $47.2 last year. We were very grateful to see our kindergarten transition aid come in pretty close to what we anticipated, which will be offsetting a good portion, but not all of, our kindergarten staffing costs. And then a property tax levy of $149 million, which is just at the tax cap of 2.52%. So in order to keep us under the tax cap and to keep us within a reasonable amount that our voters have come to expect from our fiscal responsibility here at Shen, we will need to continue to use appropriated fund balance and some particular reserves. So like last year, we will keep the $1.5 million to help offset costs. Like last year, we will keep $660,000 for employee benefits reserve, and that is for when employees retire, whatever buyouts they have at the end in terms of sick time can come out of that reserve if necessary. And so that can fluctuate from year to year, so it provides us some cover. We would this year increase our ERS reserves from $2.1 million to $2.7 million to defray the cost of what we anticipate will be $6.6 million for ERS. And we would keep the use, we did this last year, of $725,000 to defray the cost of TRS. And remember, TRS is coming down while ERS is going up, which would explain the need to increase that significantly more to help offset that cost. So our summary is that we anticipate that our budget, as I mentioned, will be just $11 million different from last year to this year. Our operational net additions, that is what we are contractually required to roll over. So that's basically where we started. We started with what we have to add $7 million to the budget between contract requirements and grants that are falling off, things that we had to be able to sustain are all living in that operational net additions. Then all of our amazing administrators submit what we lovingly call B forms, our budget forms, with requested things they would like to see happen in the next school year. We were only able to pick up $312,000 out of that, but as I mentioned, we tried to use reallocation as a strategy to try to meet the majority of needs that we were able to take a look at. And while our kindergarten aid, transition aid is at $3.1 million, our additions for TRIA that are listed in this presentation are at $3.4 million. So we've had to use funds to figure out how to close that gap to ensure we provide the robust programming. So as stated, our proposed budget increase for 26-27 is just over $11 million, which is a 5.04% increase from one budget year over the next. But yet our proposed tax levy would still be at the 2.52% for tax cap. And this is just a breakdown by code where the majority of our funds fall. You'll see instructional salaries, administrative salaries, non-instructional salaries, and on the next page, benefits, again, make up about 80% of what the budget will go towards. Equipment will just be under 1%. Contractual and other will be 7.65%. And then we have smaller percentages for textbooks, library, and VOCEs. And yes, VOCEs and textbooks are aidable, but we don't see those funds until the next school year. We did some reductions around supplies that still leave us in a healthy percentage. There are the benefits that would be tied to that overall 80% for salary and benefits, and then transfers for other funds. So the key message, I think, is our budget goal is always to maintain our existing programs, to support our needs and expand learning opportunities. And even adding a brand new school, we still, in this budget proposal, are doing that for elementary school, middle school, and high school. There's something, I think, just about for everyone, and still remaining within our tax cap with our current proposed expenditure. And so, as we move forward through the budget process, there will be tweaks and things that we adjust as we get more information, as we look at section enrollments, as we look at special education placements. But our goal will be to live within these numbers that are projected here or less in the event that we get additional funds from the State Education Department, or we are able to identify different revenue sources. And so this is just a nice summary slide that shows you that state aid will make up about 31% of our budget. Our tax levy will make up about 63% of our budget. And because we had that flat tax growth factor, our tax cap is a little bit less this year at 2.52%. And as I mentioned before, our average tax cap has been around the 3.47%, and we've tried to levy around 2.47, so our tax cap is actually fairly close to what we typically would levy. And then here you have our true tax rate, our full value growth, and our tax assessed value, and we'll talk a little bit more about those because we try to give real-time examples as we get closer to the budget vote as to how those will impact our community. And then these two final slides will not change throughout the presentation. I figured it was important to get information out early and often as to when you vote and where you vote, and information on our absentee ballots that will be available at our office, at our district office, and can be called for by to our district clerk listed here.
Cecily,
Yes.
Going back 2 slides, there are a couple things that come up a lot, and could you compare like the tax base growth factor this year compared to last year?
It's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. Okay, and then the true tax rate. Can you talk about that?
So this one, I probably am not the best person to talk about it, but I will do my very best. So your true tax rate is a combination of factors because I remember asking the question, how could it be negative?
Right.
But you have to remember that we have several towns that we have to look across in terms of what their full assessed tax value is, and therefore those numbers will fluctuate based on, some of our towns are assessed at 100%, some of our towns are assessed at 40%, and as a result, the average of that number comes out to be this. But I will make sure that the next time we present, I'll give you a clear breakdown of that where you can see what components make up the true tax rate. But like I said, we typically try to apply it in real time for that coming budget year, so taxpayers know how it's going to impact them, because depending on the town we live in, it looks a little bit different with that.
And I think the growth in the towns also pushed that further down, and so, but we don't have that at this point. We find out what that is in the fall, and this is the culminating factor of that too. Okay, thank you. Oh, this is good, especially knowing it's based on a 1% increase.
So it's very
conservative.
It's to the tax cap.
Well, I should say conservative, it's very tight.
Yeah.
It's very tight,
Yep,
yeah.
it's very tight.
That's a good place to be at this point.
Easy understanding, very well laid out. That was easier to comprehend the things, right?
Thank you.
And Kathy is unable to be here tonight, but before you have the claims audit report and risk assessment and the minutes of the audit committee.
I can comment on it. We just had the meeting, which was moved so many times because it's been a very busy few months.
It snowed, I think, twice.
Yeah, so we had to keep rescheduling, so we had to have it during the break. And I was amazed when it happened because everybody was there. That was a really encouraging thing to see. So we always go over the claims audit reports. This is something that is done for every single purchase that is made through the district. You'll see, actually I do think it's attached, the exceptions for the claims audit report. They go through all the warrants and they talk about and also the purchase orders and the confirming orders. And they talked about the exceptions. So the one thing I just wanted to comment on is you don't see that conversation even reflected in the minutes because you can't. There was just a lot discussed. But generally, for example, many of them talked about one thing you mentioned tonight in the budget, and that is the changing special ed staff, and that a lot of the things that they're still working through is training and cross-training staff, so that those number of exceptions will go down. I don't think it's actually, I don't think that separate report is there, which is fine. But I like that the auditors do that. They not only say that this is an exception, but they talk about what it is. So that's the claims audit report, and of course the board is recommending that this board tonight approve that. The internal audit report is another thing because it's sort of morphing over many years. And what I find interesting, and I'm not sure how to address this, but some of the things on there, to give the auditor's recommendation, and then it'll give how the district administration responds, right? And we walked through those, and it took quite a bit of time. But generally speaking, some of the things that I was worried about going into that meeting, I left because there were the people in the room could address all that, and that's something that I think we should probably follow up with that internal auditor going forward, because it's a lot to go through. And the other thing that I don't know if how Carla feels about this, because she's also on that committee, but some of these things were were done a long time ago, and they keep them on, and even though things have dramatically changed, but I can say that I felt I felt that our staff was on top of things. They were able to address all these things that were left, like, even when it talked about IMS, disaster recovery plan, it's like, okay, what is happening with that? The people in the room sitting at the table could speak to that, and we didn't have Ray Nardelli there either. And I was really happy with that. And so I just wanted to share that, because I don't know how many people actually read this whole document. It's quite the verbose document. And this is something I am going to recommend to the audit committee, that we change the format of this so that it's more up to date and it reflects just the current issues. What I'll also say about the risk assessment is the nice thing about going through that document is that when we get to the point where we're recommending what to look at next for the internal audit, we really are in a good place to do that. And last year this time, we were even looking to do more special ed reviews. But we talked about the special ed review that was recently done, and the action plan that is in place, and then we picked food services as the next area. I mean, we ended up not going there, even though it was on our agenda it was on our list to look at. So I say that because even when I sat down to look at this for tonight's meeting, not having all of that background information, I think that someone would wonder, especially if you're following this information closely. So I am going to make a recommendation to the auditor as far as changing the format for that internal risk assessment, so that all of this is captured for this board to consume. But we did review it, and I feel very good about where we ended up at the end of that meeting, and that was what I wanted to share tonight from that meeting. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything for that, Carla.
Oh, you were pretty good.
Okay.
Clear on everything. I find, because this is the second time I've been on the committee, and for me, I'm looking at going forward all the time, but you need to know what happened behind this whole thing so that it makes sense why certain things are coming up. So, and I appreciate, Naomi having that handled, because it helps me a lot.
Bob Presley's the other committee member that, and he was also present for that meeting. And he also contributed quite a bit. There was, if you read the minutes, it talks about cross-training. We talked about that in various areas because it did come up several times. But it was a good conversation. We got through a lot of good material, and I feel good about where we ended, but I wanted to share that just because of the way it's presented for this board and not having that background. So, could change how you feel about the report. So.
We'll take an action item on that later. All right, Ms. Carmen?
Good evening. Tonight we have a lot of policies going for first reading. They were reviewed at February's Policy Review Committee meeting and being presented tonight for first reading. A lot of these are personnel related, human resource related, and the biggest thing is really trying to streamline some of the policies so that they're in one and it's easier to find some information, and also streamlining some of those policies also allowed us to clarify what certain things mean in regards to Dignity for All Students Act, anti-harassment in the workplace, sexual harassment. So you'll see that there as noted in the memo. And then a few of those were rescinded as they were incorporated into that 7555. Are there any questions regarding any of that?
A lot of work went into it.
I just say I really appreciate the committee really looking at these policies and definitely streamlining them, making them make sense. Because when they come from the state, you're getting all this, no offense, but the language, the language is very confusing, and some of it isn't even understandable. So I really appreciate how much work you put into this and do such a good job.
We have a Shen standard we want to follow.
Yes. Yeah, you did a really good job on this group.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you, Becky.
Moving to consent items, first one out, treasurer's report, can I get a motion? Teresa's first, Naomi is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes, thank you. Combine the minutes, February 10th and February 24th. Can I have a motion? Andrea's first, Carla is second. All in favor? Motion passes. Action items, let me just bring in the, what we just talked about, the claims audit. Can I get a motion? Naomi's first, Petra second. Naomi and Carla did a great overview, so thank you very much. I doubt everybody can follow that, so all in favor? Motion passes, thanks so much. Okay, acceptance of internal audit reports, risk assessment. The risk assessment part of it. Naomi also mentioned that. Can I get a motion? Andrea's first, Naomi second. All in favor? Motion passes. Okay, we talked about the, congratulations Naomi, we won't go through that again, all good. So we'll skip on to bid for healthcare supplies. I think there were various vendors that went through the bidding. For the healthcare, yep, for an amount of $13,000. Can I get a motion? Patrice is first, Petra is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes, thanks so much. OCs, IMS purchases, technology, continued on. Star for an amount of $85,000. Can I get a motion? Naomi is first. Andrea is second. Sorry, Mary Conley is second. I'm looking at Andrea. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes. And then records management, this is the digitizing records for payroll. Can I get a motion? Teresa's first, Carla is second. Any comments or questions? All for simplifying, all in favor? Motion passes. Contracts, IMS for SHI, this is software support. 11,000. Can I get a motion? Petra is first, Carla is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Instructional materials, that's all A through D there is what we're looking at. These are all, okay, we'll go all of them together. Can I get a motion? Naomi's first, Carla is second. Any comments or questions? Happy to see them. All in favor? Motion passes. And like I talked about that slide all the way March to June, here we are, spec graduation. Here is the agreement for it. I'll see you all at the end of June. Can I get a motion? Patrice is first, Mary Colleen is second. Any comments? Okay, all in favor? Motion passes. Scholarships and local grant donations. Gratitude. Usually like to see the list up. Thank you, Dr. Wilson Turner. There's a lot this time. Good stuff. Can I get a motion? Naomi is first, Carla is second. Any comments? I'm always happy to see this, and I love that the list grows. All in favor? Motion passes. Students. Ms. Hazelton is going to make her way up. Special education placement.
Good evening. I present for your approval the special education placement recommendations. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Can I get a motion? Carla is first, Petra is second. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. And did I lose Jenny?
Yes, that's coming up.
Recommendations? Oh, Laura's coming up, right?
Good evening. Before you tonight, you have a staffing agenda for approval, but before you take action on it, I would like to just pull out a couple of appointments tonight. I'd like to specifically acknowledge Amy Irwin, an experienced educational leader with more than 20 years in teaching and administration. Amy is currently serving as a principal of Middleburg Elementary School, a role she's had since 2019. And she previously served as an assistant principal in the Albany School District at Albany School of Humanities. Once the board approves and moves her forward, Amy will officially begin with the Shenendehowa School District on April 20th as the Shattuckon Elementary principal. We look forward to her expertise and her leadership that she will bring to our school. And I would like to welcome and congratulate Amy Irwin and ask, once you make a motion, that Amy comes up if she would like to say a few words and then introduce and go around the table to the board members.
Yep, yeah, this is Shattuckon has changed. Dr. Wood, Erica third. So this is iconic and pretty historic, so welcome. So with that, can I get a motion? Ooh, Andrea went up first, Naomi went up in second, so we're so excited to hear about this, so can I get everybody approve? Yes, all right, come on up.
Thank you so much. I'm already losing my voice. It's springtime, and so I guess that happens. But I just really thank you for the opportunity, and I know I have big shoes to fill, and I know she's here. So Erica, I'm looking forward to our partnership and making this a really smooth transition for this district, and I'm just so excited and thankful for the opportunity that you're giving me. So thank you so much.
We're so thankful for you, and you do have a great mentor, and you will be fantastic.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, come on over. Come on over.
Thank you so much.
Yay. That's wonderful. Huge congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. I love that teachers showed up for you tonight too.
Yes.
Yes. Congratulations, welcome.
And congratulations. Welcome.
That's awesome.
The second one I would like to specifically acknowledge is Brian. Brian has been with our Shen team since June of 2023 as systems analyst, and he is being recommended for your approval to be promoted as a systems administrator. His knowledge and expertise will bring value add to Mr. Nardelli, the entire IMS team, as well as the entire Shen community. So I would like to congratulate and welcome Brian McCreary to the systems administrator position once you all approve. And I would ask Brian to come up and if he would like to say a few words and introduce himself to you.
Sure, he was here bright and early and I love that.
I was ready to set up. I was like, oh, right here. I want to thank the board and Shen as a whole. I love coming to work. I have a five-year-old this Friday, and I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I go to work to relax. Like, it's supposed to relax. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of work to do, but it's fun. I want to thank Ray and David before him, who is now working as one of our vendors, because they believed in me from the beginning. I applied to be a school technologist, which is like a building tech, and they told me to apply as a systems analyst instead, and I was like, I'm not qualified, I have no idea what I'm doing. And you know, they believed in me, so I want to thank them a lot for that.
That's fantastic. Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
I love it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll do it all at once now. No, I'll wait.
All set?
Yes. You got everything?
I think so.
All right, cool beans.
Thank you.
All right. Great night. Can I get a motion?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yes.
Naomi's first, Petra second.
And this is for the entire.
The entire place, yeah,
Yes.
all in favor? Motion passes, thank you, and huge congratulations, thank you, Lori, for doing that.
Thanks for lowering the mic, Lori. I should have done it before. So tonight we have second reading being presented. These were presented for first reading last month, and again, a lot of policies related to human resources personnel. Does anybody have any questions?
All right,
You do good work.
thank you. Can I get a motion? Andrew, Naomi is first. Damn, I'm looking right at you, buddy. Naomi is first.
It's always in
Can I get a second? No, Patrice is second, all in favor.
We got you.
Motion passes. Come on, Andrea.
We got
All
you.
right. Another shot for public comments. Is there anybody out there that wants to make a public comment? Vanessa, anybody? Thank you. And for the good of the order, does anybody have anything additional they want to say tonight?
I want to say really fast, I forgot my daughter and the rest of Team 20 are going to Rochester this week.
RIT or?
So, yeah.
Just Rochester, yeah, good.
Yeah, in order to premiere their brand new robot, which is very exciting and apparently is now working after many long nights. Like they come home at like 10:30 at night and they're working all day. They've actually had to set a maximum amount of 20 hours per week per kid because otherwise the kids will just keep working. And I'm just so impressed at their tenacity and how much they're learning. So like, thank you to all of the coaches at Team 20 and thanks for all the kids for their hard work.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the robot's name? They name it every year a cool name.
They do, and I don't know what it is yet. I'm not sure if it's been blessed with a name. I'll have to ask her tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
That's a great question. Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes.
The only thing I wanted to mention is we have a superintendent's conversation on Saturday, right?
Thank you, we do.
At 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Yes.
Good plug.
10 o'clock at
Shenendehowa.
Oh, is that, Carrigan Arenda.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll see you there.
Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Petra's first and Patrice is second, all in favor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.